It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? There's lots to talk about in the news today. Every morning I wake up, I read the Globe and Mail, and I try to figure out what is going on. One thing that is really exciting in the labor rights movement is that British teachers, civil servants, and others are taking part in a mass strike dubbed Walkout Wednesday. So that was yesterday, obviously, because today is Thursday. And it's this fantastic looking labor movement. I'm always jealous to see stuff like this. They are essentially on a general strike. According to unions, as many as 300,000 teachers are expected to be on strike, the biggest group involved, as part of a wider action by 500,000 people, the highest number since 2011. And being from Canada, where I feel like our workforce can be quite complacent, I'm like I said, I'm always jealous to see images like this because I genuinely believe that this is what we need to be doing in order to hold our conservative government here in Ontario accountable. And we were so close for a little while, I believe back in November, to doing something like this, but we just could not completely get it together. And this is a movement that's being supported by really all sectors. I think firefighters and Amazon employees are all part of this movement. So it's fantastic to see. And we're definitely going to be following this as the story develops. What are they asking for, you might say? Well, more money, because the cost of living is so high and it's hard for normal folks to get by. And that's something that we are facing here in Canada as Loblaws tries to explain its way out of the cost of food, but consumers, especially angry folks on Twitter, are not buying it. So recently, Loblaws, they released something on Twitter. They were kind of patting themselves on the back for doing the 11-week price freeze on no-name products. And it's really bad PR. Honestly don't even know what they're thinking, but kind of everyone is dunking on them. They are going with the message that food inflation is a global issue, which it absolutely is. But we also know that these corporations are greedy, they're making record profits, and not only that, but they are refusing to be transparent about the process. So if they want to put this issue to rest and say, hey, you know what, we're doing our best and to navigate this difficult time, and here is the transparent numbers to show you that we're not making record profits, or we are making them in a way that is not exploiting our customers, then they certainly could do that, but they are choosing not to do that. And that is all outlined here in another opinion article. They have the ability to lay greedflation charges to rest, but they decline to do so. And the reason is that these companies are so big, they're so big that they own so much, and all of their numbers are kind of just the same. So for example, if you own Shoppers Drug Mart, which sells a lot of different things other than food, and you also own Loblaws and Independent and all the grocery stores, there's no way to say, hey, we actually made that money from lipstick because people are buying more cosmetics and not from eggs and lettuce and tomatoes. But we should be getting our tomatoes out to throw at these corporate oligarchs. This is also coming at a time when Frito-Lay is hiking their prices, and so grocers are once again warning for more food increases to come. So, it sounds like we might not be able to afford buying our Tocitos, Doritos, Fritos, Litos, Cheetos, and basically anything with the Ito that ends in Ito. We might not want to be buying those products anymore and focusing on food that is healthy. But again, not everyone can afford to eat a healthy, well-rounded diet, and that's definitely part of the problem that we're seeing here in Canada. In other news, Parliament has voted in favor of accepting the Uyghur. I was saying this wrong all yesterday. I don't know why I would keep reading this phonetically. But Uyghur refugees fleeing China. So this is fantastic news. There's the Canadian government is accepting 10,000 Uyghurs fleeing persecution in China. We genuinely hope that because these are Muslim folks, that they are somehow able to land just about anywhere other than Quebec, where they are. If you haven't heard, they're a little, let's just say, intolerant of Muslim people in Quebec. Now, that is not to say that everyone in Quebec has a weird relationship with Muslim people, but it definitely is a stereotype that we have seen. And if you are unable to at least acknowledge that stereotype or acknowledge that it's something that exists, um, then maybe you're on the wrong side of the issue, and maybe it's some time to do a little bit of reflection. So, moving on, we will get to the story about Amira Elghawaby in a moment, but until we get to there, we just want to do acknowledgement for Michael Finlay, who's a retired CBC editor and who was killed, I believe, in Toronto during an assault and was passed away from the injuries. So really sad. This is coming in a time when a lot of violent actions are being documented in Toronto and in Canada. So his colleagues, well, they still haven't found the suspect. They're still at large as of this exact moment. So hopefully they find this person. And the colleagues of Michael Finlay here are remembering him as just someone who was a brilliant editor, very well respected. This is Peter Armstrong saying, I quite literally think of him every time I write a script. He knew everything. He knew the story you were working on way better than you can possibly know. So he was respected. He respected the work so much, he would inevitably make you sound smarter than you actually were. So, really sad to hear about this person who is genuinely interested in journalism, as so many of us probably watching this are. Was passed away in this random act of violence. So Mayor John Tory made a statement calling for a national summit on mental health issues, calling for the provincial and federal governments to fully and adequately fund mental health care, of which I totally agree with John Tory on this one. It's something that we need to do. It's something that we need to address here in Canada. And the problem, as John Tory actually accurately states in this case, is that it is offloaded to our shelters, to our police services, to our transit systems, and to hospital emergency departments. So by not addressing mental health at its core, we are paying for it one way or another through all of these other public services that we offer. Moving onwards, this was a really interesting case that we'll definitely be following as it unfolds. A Nova Scotia sex worker takes a client to small claims court over unpaid fee. So this is the first case of its kind where a sex worker is saying, hey, this person didn't pay me. And there's a lot of stigma against sex workers. So this is a service like any other. And the woman in this case, named Brogan Sheehan, is saying that it's a theft of services, and it absolutely is. And this is why, in my opinion, we need to legalize or decriminalize sex work, because we know that it's something that occurs, and it's just actually quite insane that in 2023 we have not been able to normalize what could just be a transaction just like any other, especially when it comes to to sex, So, and yeah, as someone is saying, Lightly Salted is saying, good for her. I hope she doesn't get targeted. I hope not either. She's really kind of on the front line of this issue. So, just for a little background knowledge here, Canada's sex trade laws are not clear cut. Purchasing sexual services is illegal, but sex workers cannot be criminally liable for selling their own sexual services. So in a way, sex workers are protected. But if you consider that in order for them to make their living, to make money, they also need customers, right? So as a result of this, unfortunately, it puts all the onus on the sex workers for then to also have to protect their clients, who, in this case, the client is being a complete POS. and was choosing not to pay this Miss Sheehan for 7 hours of work. Now, just to give you some numbers, I guess I don't know why I remember this, but it was $300 an hour for 7 hours, and he only paid $300. So he owes a lot of money in small claims courts. Um, and this stigma against sex work really just is negatively impacting someone like Miss Sheehan, who, for in any other case, in any other service you were offering, and somebody owed you like $1,800, it seems like really obvious, like that someone is owed their due. Purple Mavis in chat is saying we need to emphasize the difference between sex workers and sex trafficking. Exactly, and that's another great reason to protect these workers, and to decriminalize or legalize sex work, because it's going to put the focus not on criminalizing workers, but criminalizing people who are engaged in like super morally reprehensible activity like trafficking. And it also means that, hey, if somebody is being abusive or somebody is being exploitative, like in this case, you can just, hey, go to the police and be like, hey, this person is doing bad things. It's just like seems so obvious. But in many cases, the worker itself is put at odds between the client and the law, and they're stuck in this limbo. Miss Sheehan is even saying that she paid $10,000 in taxes last year. So it's like, well, if you're paying taxes, then maybe you should also be protected under what in any other circumstance would just be a normal situation. So really interesting case, because it's the first of its kind, and I definitely want to keep on an eye on it. Right now, Miss Sheehan is taking a step back from sex work, and she is enrolled in an adult learning program in Nova Scotia Community College, where she's working as peer support for vulnerable women for the Elizabeth Fry Society and YMCA. So I think that's great. She is like basically on the front lines of this advocacy, even outside of this court case. So I think that is fantastic. Now, this is the hot story that we've been following for a couple days now, since the beginning of the week. Quebecers are not racist, PM says amid Islamophobia backlash. So this story to me is kind of like mind-blowing, like mind-brain explosion. Amira Elghawaby is in this picture making her way to meet with Bloc Québécois leader Yves Francois Blanchet in his office on Parliament Hill. This is on February 1st, yesterday. So it's really bizarre. Amira Elghawaby has a history of advocacy for Muslim people, which includes condemning Bill 21 in Quebec, which is saying that you're not allowed to work in certain public sector jobs while wearing religious garments or religious symbols. And the thing about the law is that it says that it's broad scoping, right? But we know that it's something that is specifically targeted towards people of color, specifically Muslim women, and maybe Sikh men, who wear a hijab or a headscarf or a turban. Like it. I'm sure you're allowed to work in those public sectors and wear a cross on your necklace under your shirt. Like it's just like a ridiculous kind of authoritarian law, and Miss Elghawaby is totally right to be calling it out. I don't know how you could be an advocate for Islamophobia. Sorry, an advocate for anti-Islamophobia, and not have a history of commenting on Bill 21 in Quebec. It's pretty much the gold standard example for racism in Canada towards Muslim people. So Quebecers are being, again, they're in a way showing how xenophobic they are by saying that, hey, this person should not be appointed to that position. This person needs to be let go. And what is, I think, really disappointing is that the Trudeau Liberals have kind of like backed off, and they're not giving a full-throated defense of Miss Elghawaby. And basically, I think they've put her in a position where she has now been forced to apologize for comments that I think were true in the first place, and it's absolutely ridiculous that she is being forced to apologize. You know, it's like her first action essentially in this position as an ambassador for someone fighting Islamophobia is essentially to concede ground against people who are Islamophobic. So I think it's really unforgivable. I think it's a pattern we've seen with the Trudeau government. I can certainly remember him throwing Mario Monsef under the bus, and it now seems like Amira is also being thrown under the bus. Why? Because you, unfortunately, in Canada, you just simply cannot piss people in Quebec off because you need their votes. So that's why, that's why Bill 21 is able to exist in the first place. It's not something that could exist in any other province. But because Liberals need to court the votes of Quebecers, they completely lose their spine and they concede on this issue. So really unfortunate to see, but I think now it's a great example of how racist people in Quebec really are, because they're outraged and playing the victim in this case. So if you're unable to recognize, if you're in Quebec and you're watching this, if you're unable to recognize, hey, maybe some people in Quebec are racist, then I don't know, you're living in a parallel reality. If people told me that, hey, some Canadians are racist, Canadians have a history of being racist, and they are for these specific reasons and that specific law, I would be like, absolutely they are. I wouldn't be like, how dare you? I'm a Canadian. And the fact that you're playing victim is like, it's honestly really pathetic. I would have never backed down on this, and I feel really bad for Amira Elghawaby, who probably was kind of forced to back down for political reasons, not reasons that benefit the Muslim community in Canada. Okay, moving on. First Nations are seeking billions for a broken treaty, but Ontario says it owes no money. So, if we know anything about Canada, we do know that it is a colonial place, that is a racist place as well, and if people were to call Canada racist for this reason or genocidal for this reason, I wouldn't be like, wow, how dare you? I'm taking offense to this because I'm a Canadian. I would be like, oh wow, like this is something that we need to address, that we need to address and maybe pay reparations for. So indigenous communities are in court seeking billions of dollars in compensation after almost 150 years of receiving small annual payments in return for ceding an area the size of France. But the Ontario government is arguing they are owed nothing, or at most $34 million. So this is definitely another case that we're going to be watching as it unfolds. This has to do with the treaty rights of communities in Northern Ontario specifically. And of course, Ontario, in its spectacular fashion, is saying, we don't owe you butt kiss, to censor myself there. So we really need to kind of like make reparations with First Nations. As we know, Truth and Reconciliation Day is not a holiday, and it's not an official holiday here in Ontario. So perhaps it's no surprise that there's going to be no reparations for First Nations, who are probably owed, let's face it, a great deal of money. And one thing that I always think about with these treaties is like these are like agreements that were made essentially under duress. If you were to make similar agreements in today's modern system, I don't think they would even hold up in law. And the fact is, like, they're trying to uphold these treaties, and the Ontario government is being a weaselly little liar, dude, and they're trying to like get out of it and not pay what should be amounting to tens of billions of dollars in reparations. So I think it's great that they're going so high with these reparations, because they're probably going to have to meet somewhere in the middle. So why not, if they go low, we go high. So yes, the final amounts claimed as payable are large. They are large because the Crowns did not honor the treaty obligation. They are large, but they are not untoward, which is like, I guess, such a legal way to put it there. So, Ms. Evans, representing the federal government, said Tuesday the Anishinaabes' share of the net crown revenues should be roughly 10%, reflecting the ratio of Indigenous to non-Indigenous people in the Robinson Superior Treaty Territory. She did not put forward a precise dollar figure, but opposed the economic rents approach of First Nations. So the economic rents is something up here that is why they're owed tens of billions of dollars. It's because the clients are claiming 84% share of the net crown revenues in 5 areas, including mining and forestry. So I think, we owe First Nations people a lot of money, a lot of the economic activity that's going to continue in Ontario, especially as we kind of exploit Northern Ontario for its resources in our late stage capitalist economy. I think they are owed their due. So we'll be watching this as it unfolds as well. Obviously, I don't, I have a bit of hesitation about Ontario, and as a taxpayer, like that's like paying billions of dollars, and where that money is going to come from. But it's a conversation that we absolutely need to be having. So the last thing here is King Township Mayor says he knew nothing about the Greenbelt plans in advance. This has to do with the new leader of the Ontario NDP, Murray Stiles. They're coming out with new evidence against Mayor Steve Pellegrini, who is calling these allegations slanderous. Essentially, he met with a landowner who snatched up a bunch of land near, what's it called? King Township. And this was like literally 4 days or so before the whole Greenbelt transfer came out. And so, we're kind of at a he said, she said situation here. Mr. Steve Pellegrini is saying he had no idea, and that he was simply meeting with a wealthy developer who had Michael Rice, who had snatched up a bunch of land, and they were planning to build a hospital, but there was no plan to build residential districts. So I mean, it's all very suspicious, because I mean, why would you build a hospital in an area that's not populated with humans, So it definitely feels like some fishy play is going on here. I guess right now we're just at a point where it's he said, she said, but I think there are people investigating this, and it's all gonna come to light soon. So one thing I did want to look up, because I'm like, what does this Steve Pellegrini person look like? And I'm like, does he have a trustworthy face? I just want to know. And like, this is his Twitter photo. I'm like, he literally looks like he would be like a baron in like feudal times, So I don't know. Immediately, this is my personal bias creeping in here, but I'm definitely very suspicious of this, and I'm very suspicious of people in power, and what we're just gonna have to wait and see. I hope that the NDP and Mary Stiles is able to take a really strong stance against Doug Ford and everyone who is working really hard to develop the Greenbelt against the will of Ontarians. So thank you for watching the news in the morning with my homie Tutaro. That's me. And if you have made it this far in the video on YouTube, then please don't be shy. Give me a like. Give me a follow, because I'm trying to hit that magic 1,000 follower number, and we're almost 20% of the way there, and every little bit counts. So if you feel like commenting, that's great too, or ringing the bell. Every little bit helps me out. So thank you so much. Join us, says Lightly Salted in chat. Yes, that we would really appreciate if you joined us.